There are places where history does not disappear. It waits. Behind warped wooden doors, under torn canvas covers, in sealed garages where the air has not moved properly in decades, in forgotten coach houses behind mansions that no longer belong to the families who built them, in collapsing country estates where dust settles layer by layer over chrome, lacquer, leather, and glass, until the machine beneath stops looking like a car and starts looking like a memory. And sometimes, when the light enters at the right angle, you can still see it. A hood line too long to belong to an ordinary vehicle. A fender curved with the arrogance of another age. A grille so upright and formal, it feels like a gate to an empire that no longer exists. These are not just abandoned cars. They are the remains of vanished confidence. Today on Timeless Treasures, we step into that silence, into the hidden corners where the world's most valuable, forgotten cars still sleep, waiting beneath the dust of empires. Because there was a time when luxury was not subtle. It was long, heavy, hand-built, proud of itself. In the early decades of the 20th century, the finest cars in the world were not designed merely to transport people. They were designed to express order, rank, power, permanence. They were built for industrial dynasties, aristocratic families, financiers, diplomats, and magnates who expected the machine beneath them to reflect the scale of the life they lived. A great luxury car of that era did not try to impress in the modern way, with aggressive lines or loud exhaust. It impressed through proportion, through mass, through silence, through craftsmanship so expensive and so time-consuming that the car itself felt less like a product and more like architecture on wheels. Names like Duesenberg, Hispano-Suiza, Bugatti, Packard, Pierce Arrow, Delahaye, Cadillac V16, Rolls-Royce. These names still carry weight, but in their own time, they carried something even more dangerous. They carried certainty. Certainty that wealth would last. Certainty that nations would remain stable. Certainty that the families commissioning these machines would continue indefinitely, passing estates, titles, and property from one generation to the next. But history is not polite. Empires break. Fortunes split. Wars arrive. Taxes rise. Mansions are sold. Children move away. Staff disappear. Garages become storage rooms. Coach houses are locked, then forgotten. A machine built to represent permanence suddenly finds itself without a clear future. That is how many of the greatest luxury cars in the world vanish. Not in fire, not in dramatic theft, not in one final reckless drive. They vanish quietly. A patriarch dies, and no one in the family knows what to do with the old formal car in the back building. A once prestigious mark becomes obscure to younger heirs who recognize the house, but not the metal sleeping beside it. A collection is divided on paper, but not in practice, and the cars simply stay where they are. Years pass, then more years. Dust becomes insulation. Rubber dries. Leather stiffens. The building around the car begins to age along with it. And then, decades later, someone opens a door. That moment is one of the most haunting in all of automotive history. The rediscovery of a forgotten luxury car is never only about value. The headlines often reduce it to that. Auction estimates, hidden millions, lost treasures, barn finds. But the real feeling is stranger and more powerful than that. Because when a great forgotten car reappears, it does not come back alone. It brings its entire world with it. The smell of old wood, oil, and moth-eaten wool, faded travel labels, a folded robe in the rear compartment, silver trim now dulled to a ghostly gray, coach-built door handles cold to the touch, a rear vanity mirror, a chauffeur's divider, a badge on the radiator from a company that no longer exists, a registration paper folded into an envelope from a hotel in a country whose borders may not even be the same anymore. This is why the greatest survivor cars feel almost sacred. They do not simply survive as machines, they survive as environments. A forgotten Duesenberg in an American carriage house is not only a car, it is a physical record of how American wealth once wanted to be seen. Long-hooded, formal, technically extravagant, impossible to ignore. A sleeping Hispano-Suiza in Europe does not just represent engineering excellence. It represents an era when refinement still believed in ceremony, when luxury meant silence, mass, and handcrafted confidence. A dusty pre-war Rolls-Royce in a private garage does not only tell the story of the brand, it tells the story of a family that once believed enough in continuity to preserve such a thing, even if only by accident. And that is the great paradox of forgotten luxury. The very cars built to symbolize permanence often survive because they were neglected, not because they were carefully celebrated. The untouched car is often the one that escaped history's worst instinct: improvement. This is why patina matters so much in these discoveries. In a survivor luxury car, every worn surface has meaning. The cracked lacquer on the dashboard, the softened leather on a rear armrest, the clouding on a glass lens, the slight sinking of a seat cushion where someone important sat again and again over years of use. Even dust becomes part of the story because it proves time happened continuously, quietly, honestly. When restorers erase too much, they do not just remove damage. They erase evidence. And with ultra-rare luxury cars, evidence is everything. Because the best forgotten cars are not simply those that are rare. They are the ones that remain themselves. Still wearing original coachwork, still carrying original details, still showing the choices made by the people who commissioned them, still bearing the marks of age instead of the fingerprints of a modern fantasy. That is what makes certain rediscoveries feel almost painful in their beauty. You are not just looking at a machine, you are looking at a surviving argument against disposability. And the deeper you go into these hidden stories, the more you realize that forgotten luxury cars expose something uncomfortable about modern taste. Today, luxury is often marketed as speed, technology, minimalism, screens, and software. The old cars speak a different language entirely. They speak in wood grain, weight, deep carpeting, real chrome, thick glass, and panel fit done by hand. They were not designed to feel temporary. They were designed to feel inherited. Even their flaws now seem dignified. A massive turning circle, slow steering, heavy controls, engines that need patience, brakes that ask for respect. They require something from the driver and from the owner: attention, ritual, understanding. The relationship is not casual. And perhaps that is why their rediscovery feels so emotionally charged today. Because when a great forgotten luxury car is found, it reminds us that there was once a class of machine built under a completely different philosophy. Not optimized for leasing cycles, not filtered through focus groups, not softened into generic safety by market sameness. These were machines with identity so strong that even in decay, they still project status. A great silent limousine hidden for 50 years is not reduced by dust. In some ways, it is intensified by it. The dust proves the time, the silence proves the abandonment, and the survival proves the original quality. That is why some of the most extraordinary collections in the world are not the polished museum halls everyone knows. They are the private accumulations that history forgot to disturb. The country house garages, the family warehouses, the underground storerooms, the collapsed barns behind estates where one generation built aggressively and the next generation simply locked the door. Inside those places, automotive hierarchy remains frozen. Formal limousines still sit taller than the sports cars beside them. Custom-bodied coupes still carry the strange confidence of hand-built proportion. The great radiator shells still rise from the dust like monuments. You can still sense which cars were built for owners, which for chauffeurs, which for ceremony, which for travel across nations, which for appearances in front of embassies, opera houses, and hotels with liveried attendants. And then you realize something profound. These are not merely forgotten cars. They are forgotten ways of living. The cars survived, but the world that produced them did not. The staff are gone. The rituals are gone. The manners, the schedules, the expectations, the architecture of status that gave these machines their full context, much of it is gone. What remains is the shell, the craft, the engineering, the evidence. And that is enough. Because evidence matters. It matters that these cars were real, that such extravagance was once normal in certain circles, that entire engineering departments and coach builders and trim specialists and foundries and leather workers and wood finishers all once existed to produce this level of mechanical theater. A forgotten luxury car is proof that entire civilizations can be measured not only by their buildings, their art, or their wars, but also by the machines they considered worthy of making beautifully. That is why these stories matter far beyond collectors. They matter because they preserve the physical standards of an age, the tolerances, the materials, the attitudes, the assumptions about what a machine could be if enough money, time, labor, and certainty were poured into it. And here's the strange comfort in all of this. Even after fortunes vanish, even after families scatter, even after roofs leak and dust thickens, and leather dries and paint loses its shine, the very best cars still hold themselves together with a kind of dignity. The lines remain right, the doors still hang properly, the metal still carries its shape, the dashboard still framed the cabin with purpose. Even at rest, even forgotten, even unfinished by time, they continue to communicate the same thing they always did. We were built seriously. And perhaps that is why people respond so strongly when these machines are rediscovered. Not because everyone wants to own one, not because everyone loves old luxury cars, but because everyone recognizes seriousness when they see it. Real workmanship, real permanence, real ambition built into steel, aluminum, leather, lacquer, walnut, wool, chrome. In an age of plastic speed and disposable prestige, forgotten luxury feels almost moral. It reminds us that beauty can still be structural, that engineering can still be noble, that silence can still mean quality, not emptiness, that age can deepen value rather than diminish it. So when the next hidden limousine emerges from a sealed garage, when the next coach-built relic appears under a blanket of dust, and headlines rush to price it, remember this: its value is not only in rarity, its value is in survival. It survived neglect. It survived fashion. It survived changing markets, broken lineages, economic collapse, indifference, misunderstanding, and time itself. It survived the death of the world that created it. And that is why the dust matters. Because the dust is not just dirt. It is evidence that the empire ended, and the machine remained. If the greatest cars deserve to be remembered not only for what they were, but for the worlds they outlived, then the dust of empires is not a tragedy. It is a witness.